Hi, I am Chef Santo with Ray Ray Seafood and Chicken, the Outer Banks, North Carolina. Today we're working with a product from Odell's up here in West Virginia, Amma, West Virginia, and we're going to be cooking with chuck roast. Now the interesting thing about this beef is it's certified Black Angus beef, local grown, and the best part about it is instead of working with, say, maybe a New York strip or a ribeye or some other prime cut, we're just going to be using a kind of a pedestrian cut, something that you would find in the grocery store for $3 or $4 a pound. And people usually throw in the oven for 5 or 6 hours just trying to cook it down so that it's palatable. This beef is such good quality that we're actually going to use this as like a table beef, a centerpiece beef. We're going to throw it on the grill. I'm going to show you guys how to marinate it and have a nice little 20 or 30 minute recipe that you can use with some of the nice fresh vegetables that you get this time of year. So the way I like to start with this, being that it is not a ribeye or a New York strip, is we usually go along any of the bony areas and anywhere where there might be a little bit of tendon or toughness, and we take a fork and we're just going to work it around in there through the meat. And you'll definitely feel it as you're doing this. You'll feel the parts that are a little bit tougher, and the ones that are a little bit tougher you'll want to go over a couple times. So we don't have to pulverize the meat, but this is just kind of what they call mechanically tenderizing. That got a bad rap because of companies doing it on a large scale, but there's nothing wrong with a little bit of mechanical tenderizing when you're working in your own kitchen to help the meat kind of absorb and marinate and cook evenly, and at the end you get a little bit more tender product. Alright guys, it's time to put together our marinade. We're doing a teriyaki-based marinade today. The kind of teriyaki sauce I like to use generally features a whole sesame seed in it. That's the case with this one. It's made by Soye. You can find this at any local grocery store, and they make really good quality teriyaki marinades. So we're going to start with some of that. Now this is a very good quality beef, so we don't want to kill it with the marinade, right? We want this to be something where the flavor of the beef can kind of shine through. So we're going to go ahead and use the juice of a couple limes. I don't prefer lemon juice when I'm making a marinade for red meat, and I'll tell you why. Lemon juice has a lot more acid in it than lime juice does. So when you're cooking with lime juice, you're not as likely to begin cooking your meat before it even hits the grill, so to speak. When you're using lemon juice, a lot of times people wonder why their meat has come out just a little bit tough or maybe a little bit more overdone than what they wanted, even though they had the temperatures right. And the answer is they're using lemon juice, and that acid gets in there and begins to cook it just like you would seafood with a ceviche. And we don't want to do that with this beef, so we're going to control our acid here. We're going to get all the nice brightness from the lime juice, that citrus flavor, but we're not going to overcook it the way we would if we used lemon. Next step is garlic powder. A little bit goes a long way with garlic powder, so we don't want to overdo it there. Maybe about a teaspoon. Onion powder, I like to double up on because everybody likes steak and onions. That just goes well together, right? So we're going to probably put in the equivalent of a tablespoon and a half of onion powder. And then no grill marinade is ready until you put the black pepper in. So about a teaspoon of black pepper. We're going to give that a quick whisk. Combine all those flavors. And this is what we're going to baste our meat in. We're going to take one of these cuts. I did transfer my marinade to a nice large bowl here so that we have plenty of room to work. And we're just going to sink it down in there. Let it absorb some of that goodness. Give it a quick turn. And this is where we're going to let it weigh for about 2 hours before we put it on the grill. So we've let it marinate for just a little while. You could go a couple hours. If you want, you could go 20 or 30 minutes. I'm going to show you guys a little trick to get all that flavor in the meat without having to go so long with the marinating. So before we put this on the grill, we're going to go ahead and hit it with some of my dry rub. What I like to use for a dry rub usually combines a little bit of brown sugar so that it kind of caramelizes on the meat. We'll put a little bit of paprika, a little bit of black pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, kind of some redundancy from what we put in the marinade itself. So we're just going to go and sprinkle it on there liberally. One thing that's very difficult to do when you're cooking a nice thick cut of meat like this is over season it. You can under season it, but it's kind of difficult to over season it. when the meat is cooking on that grill, it really has a tendency to just kind of sweat a lot of those marinades and a lot of those dry rub seasonings right off of it. And what you get is just a hint of your marinade and a hint of your seasoning and a lot of flavor from the beef itself. And that's exactly what we want here. So we've got our grill running at about 400 degrees. Now I know a lot of people out there are going to tell you, get that grill as hot as it can go and just sear it to get the juices in it. Just hold the juices in. I don't really agree with that, and a lot of chefs don't, and I'll tell you why. We're going to go ahead and put this on the grill while we talk about that. You can hear we're getting a little bit of a sizzle, and what that sizzle is it's the juices and the marinade from the meat going down and hitting the hot surfaces and the flames, and then all that smoke from those reserves and the juices are coming up and kind of basting the meat, and that's where you get that nice charcoal flavor. So if you make it too hot, you're kind of searing that really fast and you're having to get the meat off the grill really fast. You're only turning it once. I like to kind of rotisserie my beef when it gets on there. So a medium heat on the grill itself. We're going to let it cook on there for a few minutes. We're going to give it a turn, and then we're going to let it cook a few more minutes, and then we're going to do it again. So it's kind of cook, turn, repeat. While we have this side face up here, we're going to put a little bit of our dry seasoning on. We've had it on the grill for about 4 to 5 minutes on a medium temperature, medium high. So we're just going to turn these guys over here and let the other side get a little bit of love from the flames. Close the grill back up again, let it get a little bit of heat, bring the temperature up to about a rare, and then I'm going to show you what we'll do next. So we've already turned the meat once. We can kind of poke around on the meat and tell where it's at. So right now we're running just about rare. That would be a cool red center. A good way to be able to tell that is if you take your index finger and your thumb, you put them together, you poke that muscle right there, that texture right there, that amount of firmness would be rare. This would be about medium rare. This would be medium, and this would be medium well, very firm. So right there is where we want this before we give this a baste back in the marinade. Nice thing is we don't really have to worry about any sort of cross-contamination with this because this is going right back on the grill just like the meat is itself. So no chance of any cross-contamination doing this. And again, this is a great way when you don't have a lot of time to marinate your meat. You didn't have a chance to say do it overnight or for a full 2 hours. Just give it a second basting back in here. This hot meat is going to absorb all that flavor from the marinade. And then when we put it back in, you hear that hiss. We're just getting that flavor coming back up from the flame and just kissing the meat for us. You can tell just looking at the marinade, we started off with kind of a lake. We're down to a puddle. The meat, when it's nice and hot like this, absorbs the marinade like crazy, and that means it is absorbing flavor like crazy. All right, everybody back in the pool, and we're gonna shut the grill again. All right, guys, we're gonna go ahead and give the meat one last turn here. We're starting to get close. If you look real closely at the meat, you're gonna notice all these nice juices, what they call the reserves from the beef, kind of puddling up at the top here. And while that's great flavor, what makes it even better is when we go ahead and turn it over, that hits the bottom of the grill and you see all that white smoke coming up. That's just basting the meat in all that flavor as it drips down. So that's the greatest way to get the flavor that comes out of the meat right back into it. It's putting it on a nice open grill like this and letting it cook right back into the meat itself. We're about ready to party now. This beef is nice, it's done, I can tell. Poking it around here, we're running at about 140 degrees, which is exactly what we want for kind of that warm, reddish, pink center. Not overdone, but it's not mooing at you now either. So we're gonna let that meat sit for about 5-6 minutes, and then it's gonna be ready to cut and serve. Alrighty guys, the meat's done. It's rested for about 5-10 minutes. You can let it rest really as long as you want. The trick is you don't want to be cutting into that meat when it's fresh off the grill because it's still continuing to cook for just a little bit. And we don't want to just boil the juices right out of it. We want the people to experience that when they bite into it. Now as you look at this cut of meat, it's kind of an irregular cut of meat. Again, getting back to it not being a prime rib or a New York strip. The best way to cut this is to locate the bone. We see the bone right in the middle there, and the grain of the meat kind of runs all towards the bone. So what we're going to do, we're going to start on one end of this bone, and we're going to cut perpendicular to the grain, and we're going to cut it off in a nice thin slice at a bias so that it looks really nice on the plate. Thank you for coming. Now, if you could please get out of my kitchen. I'm about to eat some of this delicious Odell's beef. Go on, shoot, get.